Hello, everyone. Thank you for tuning in for another episode of Closing the Gap. It's me, Stephen, the owner of the Paranormal United Network, and we are closing the gap with our friends overseas with my co-host.
I am Kell. I'm from the northeast of England, and it is my pleasure to be on the show again.
And Miss Kell, who do we have the pleasure is our special guest today?
This person I've been absolutely dying to interview for a very long time. Unfortunately, he doesn't understand my accent very well, so I'm going to have to speak slowly tonight. And it is, in fact, Mike Heston-Rogers from the Fire in the Sky incident from 1975. The film came out in 1993, I think it was. So I think everybody who's in the UFO world actually knows exactly who I'm talking about.
Absolutely. So let's just get right down to it. I'm going to bring our special guest on, Mr. Mike Heston-Rogers. He is from the Travis Walton. He's one of the eyewitnesses of the Travis Walton incident, which, like you said, it brought on the Hollywood movie Fire in the Sky. He is one of the witnesses that are left. So let's just get right down to it and bring Mr. Mike Heston-Rogers on. How you going, Mike?
Very good. How are you doing?
Doing good.
Brilliant to have you on the show. As I've explained, Mike doesn't understand my accent very well, so I'm going to attempt to talk a little bit slowly, just so we can understand.
Go. Talk a little slower, that helps.
Yeah, definitely. So
I still don't understand her, so
cheeky. I'm going to just jump straight in and ask you a few questions, if that's okay, Mike.
Okay.
From the incident from Fire in the Sky, when you were up there logging, had you been going up there for long?
Oh, yeah. Actually, when I was 17, I first started doing that kind of work. before I even got out of high school, really, in the summer times. But that area right there in Arizona, that the rim country, we call it, where all the timber is, most of it. I spent most of my entire life there. In fact, that's where I live now. So yeah, during that time, in fact, all during my life, basically, that's where I've been.
Did anybody at the crew or yourself ever see anything strange before the incident happened up there?
Yeah. Yes, we certainly did.
Could you tell what you see?
Well, my brother and I one time had a sighting. The first time I ever saw anything that could be considered a UFO. In fact, I didn't even think of UFOs as being a craft from another planet or anything, until I was probably mid-20s, and my brother and I were working in the woods cutting trees, and one day just got a strange feeling. I looked up, and almost straight above was a silver orb, I guess you'd call it, like a silver ball. And there we stayed right there, and the clouds, the high cirrus clouds went above it and drifted on for a long time, for over half an hour. Finally got tired of doing it. In fact, we laid down for a while and watched it with our heads against a log. And finally went back to work. About a year or two later, Travis Walton and I and 4 of my family members, my brother, 2 of my sisters, and my wife were driving down to Phoenix one evening. It was after dark, and we, just a short ways out of Snowflake there towards the west, we saw something come down out of the clouds very slowly. It took a long time. In fact, the whole incident took probably more than 10 minutes, because it took us that long at highway speed to get to where we could see it very clearly. And the road always goes towards the west in that area, through there. It heads pretty much straight west, doesn't do much in the way of curves, so it was always in the rear, in the windshield, where you could see it out the front of the car. And when we got up onto a ridge where we could see it really well, then we could see it very well, and it was very striking, and it had come down out of the clouds by this time to where it was a full sphere, a full circle, and all of a sudden the light came on, an extremely bright light. It didn't seem to have a fixture it came from, just a point that it was coming from, but it was lighting up an area underneath this object, which itself was like 80 to 100 feet in diameter. It was yellowish white in color, and on the part of it was a sort of a purplish color. That's hard to describe. I drew a picture of it. I did a CGI of that here recently, but I don't have it to show you right now. Anyway, that light that came on lit up an area with exact edges. It was a circle on the ground, probably a little bit larger than a football field, and it was brighter than day. We kept moving towards it. Anyway, it when it got down to within 200 or 300 feet of the ground, it stopped just for a couple of seconds, then started going back up, and it went back up slowly. And when it finally got back up to where it was going back into the clouds, the light that had come on suddenly went off. Everything was dark underneath it, but the object itself was still lighted the same. And it slowly took off and headed towards the west, and disappeared into the clouds. That it seemed to be forming the clouds that it was in to begin with, and that it was in when it left. And when we finally got down to where we would be pretty much right under where the objects had been, mist, fine mist appeared on the windshield, and so thick that I had to turn the windshield wipers on. And that lasted a few seconds, and then we went out of it. And at some point later on, we stopped the car, and because the clouds that it had gone into were still orange, very orange, and like sunset. But of course, the sun has set long, long before. So this object was creating the light in the clouds. And we got out and we looked at it for a while, but we realized it wasn't doing anything, and it was just the light was dimming, and it seemed to be gone, or at least gone from appearance entirely. So we went ahead and went on down to Phoenix. But that happened 5 years before the incident in 1975, during that 5 years, we didn't make anything of that incident, really. It was just kind of a thing that happened. We didn't know what to make of it, and that was that.
Well, that's incredible. When on the night that you actually seen the craft with Travis and the rest of the crew, basically, I've seen on the film that you thought it was a plane crash or hunter's fire.
The guys in the truck, I couldn't really see it myself because I was paying attention to the road, and this object was off to the right. And they were speculating on what it could be. They were saying it could be a plane crash or some campers or a vehicle or who knows what, a forest fire. But none of that was correct, of course. Once we rounded a curve in the road there and came into a clearing, they could see it very clearly, and I still couldn't see it myself, and I turned the truck off.
So
what they saw is what they've all described it looking like, and which I've painted a couple of times.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question, is what did it look like to you?
Yeah. Well, on my Facebook page, all the paintings that I've done, all but one or two of them anyway, are there. But the way it looked was like a traditional UFO. It wasn't a sphere. The thing we saw in 1970 was a sphere. This was round, as far as like looking at it from the top or bottom, but it looked like a couple of pie pans placed lip to lip, and there could have been a dome on top, but from the angle I was looking up at it, I couldn't see but an essence of that. But it had a framework, and in between the framework there were panels that were lighted, and it was a very striking image. It was not only glowing, and you could see the metallic parts of the framework, or what looked metallic. It was also looking shiny, like it was covered with glass, like a new car would look, with bright lights on it, reflecting everything around it, but also shiny. Yeah.
Yeah. What did
I have
actually?
a quick question.
Okay, go ahead.
Mike, so when you guys saw it and all, the lights, did it burn anything into the ground, or was there any like burnt spots or anything like that, or?
No,
Okay.
nothing like that at all.
Did it make any noise at all?
When we first stopped there, in fact, when I first turned the truck off, I couldn't hear anything. I didn't know what it was. I had to lean over. Ken Peterson was there in the middle, in the front seat, and I almost had to put my head in his lap in order to see this thing. I had to lean down that far because this thing was above a ridge, which was probably 15, 20 feet above eye level, and the UFO was, I don't know, 20, 25 feet above that. So it wasn't like I had to get way over. It's just that I had to lean over in order to see it. Okay. And that's the first time I did see it, and then I became the whole scene for me changed, because before I saw it, I didn't know what we were doing. I didn't know. I was only stopping because Travis had gotten out of the truck already, and I put the emergency brake on and all that, turned the truck off. Once I saw it, I just didn't know what to think. For a long time there, it was just like Had no idea even what to think of it. It was just astounding.
Yeah.
Didn't know what it was.
That's what one of my questions was going to be, is what went through your mind when you actually seen it.
At first, nothing. Just a great wondering, and that quickly
What have you got
changed to.
yourself into?
And once I saw it, of course, I knew exactly. I mean, you could see exactly what it looked like. It wasn't blurry or anything like that. It was very stark. It had very sharp edges, and the color was slightly, kind of a white color, but slightly yellowish, and nothing at all like in the movie Fire in the Sky. That was a creation of the writers and the whoever that made the movie. In fact, most of that movie is pretty much inaccurate. That's the best thing I can say about it, inaccuracy.
There you go, Michael. You answered that.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
go ahead. Got a question?
So obviously, Travis was struck by some sort of energy. Is that right?
Yeah. You asked about a sound. Like I say, it didn't make any sound at first. And as when I first saw it, I looked over. I could see Travis was like about halfway over to this thing. He was still walking very quickly. I mean, when he first jumped out of the truck, I could see that he was walking very quickly at first. By the time I looked up to see the UFO and back down to him, he was still walking fairly briskly, but he slowed down, as he got closer. And it didn't, this thing was like less than 100 feet away. In fact, we measured later, like the following year, I measured from where the truck was up to where Travis at least had been standing. And this thing was up above him, 25 feet or something like that. And that was 93 feet. Just forget the inches. It was 93
Wow.
feet, basically. So it was pretty close. And the object couldn't have been more than, 105 feet or so away, from us if you actually measured
Right.
the distance to the UFO. But of course, it wasn't there to measure, so just have to estimate that. But anyway, it started making a sound. When I first saw Travis walking up there, I could hear a sound that at first wasn't audible, but then it became audible, and it was very strange. It was. Some of the guys there described it as a kind of a beeping sound at first, and then it changed, got louder and more intense, and became more, I don't know how you describe it, an oscillating sound that got loud enough. Pretty soon it was vibrating the truck. I know that because I had my hand on the steering wheel still, my left hand, and I could feel a vibration through the steering wheel. And the guys in the truck could feel that vibration. And it became quite frightening at that point. Just the sound alone became frightening. And of course, seeing what Travis was doing, come up as close as he could get to it, that was even more frightening. And
Right.
people in the truck started yelling at him. I don't remember who or what they said exactly, but they were beckoning him to come back. And he did look back at us. At least once, maybe a couple of times, and he stopped going towards it when he was pretty much under it. Not quite. He couldn't. It was too high above him to actually reach it or him to touch it. But he got pretty close, and he didn't stand there very long. Kind of had his hands in his pockets, just looking up at it, and. Then he looked like he got frightened or something, because this thing by this time got very scary with the sound and the way, and it started moving as well. It started swaying and making motions like it was going to leave or so. Who knows what the motions were all about, but it started moving, put it that way. And those motions
Right.
became more erratic within seconds. And Travis reacted to that, all that, and he looked as though he was turned to come back to the truck, and then something came out of the bottom of the craft, which other guys have described. I didn't see it come out of the bottom of the craft. I did see what hit him in the chest. It's like an explosion of light, and it
Right.
blew him back very forcefully, and he hit the ground some distance away, and didn't look as though he was alive. He was dead at that point. At least he looked that way.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
wow.
that point
Yeah.
you drove off, yeah, is that right?
Say that again.
What at that point you drove away?
Oh, at that point, I was completely overcome with fear, just like the other guys in the truck.
Yeah.
And it took me a few seconds, but I turned the truck back on, took the emergency brake off, and hit the gas and took off down the road. I can't say
Wow.
we didn't go very far. I mean, just it was only probably less than a minute that this whole incident happened, and the time before when we left, the time I stopped the truck was probably just a few seconds. Nothing like in the movie. That elongates everything. The movie elongated all that time. The time was very brief compared to what you saw in the movie.
Yeah.
In fact, what you see in the
Right.
movie, in terms of UFO, it wasn't like that at all. And what hit Travis wasn't like they showed in the movie. What they showed in the movie was not dramatic at all. It was in the movie, it was just like a light shining on him, and then something pushed him back and up. Nothing like that. He was hit with like an explosion of light in front of him, which blew him up
Right.
and back.
Interesting.
And
Well, I mean, they that's Hollywood. They have to sell their product to,
well,
even though it's
in
not
my
even
opinion,
near the truth.
in my opinion, they undersold it because they under-exaggerated. People say Hollywood exaggerates everything. Well, they did the reverse of that with us.
Right.
Even what we described to everybody, including Tracy Torme that wrote the screenplay for the movie. He spent quite a bit of time with me, asking me all kinds of questions. I painted the picture for him. In fact, I showed him the painting that I had done. And when they made the movie, it's like they had a small budget for extra effects or whatever you call it, because
Right.
they could have done stuff with that. They just there was no drama to it. The light that hit Travis was so powerful, it was amazing what it looked like and the way it blew him back and everything. And they didn't display that at all.
So how long was it before you realized Travis was actually gone?
Well, I mean, it only took, we stopped the truck, like I said, probably a little over an eighth of a mile away, less than a quarter. I've always said a quarter, but it was probably less than that. And
Right.
we stopped the truck, and it didn't take us very long. We all got out. In fact, we all got out, and we pretty much got into the headlights of the truck. But as we were getting out, everybody that I've talked to says that they saw this thing lift up. We were looking at it through quite a bit of forest by that time, several big trees in the way, and so we couldn't see the object directly, but we could see the light. We could see the essence of it lift up, I don't know, 50, 100 feet in the air, and then it streak off towards the northeast, and just very quickly, extremely fast, just a whoosh, and it's gone. And anyway, we all saw that, and to me that said, whatever it is, it's gone. We can go back. And of course, we left Travis there, and it took us a few more minutes it took me several more minutes to get those guys, to realize that we need to go back, and they weren't for that at all. Finally, I just said, we're going back. The truck's going back, and if you want to go, get in the truck. Otherwise, you can stand here. Everybody got in the truck, and the road we was on was kind of narrow, too narrow. In fact, in order to get in there, we had to dig out certain portions so we could get through, because it would have been officially closed.
Right.
And we went up to the rim road and got the truck turned around and headed back. We were gone 15 minutes, something like that. And when we got back there, I pulled the truck up into that clearing to where the headlight was showing up near where Travis had been standing. and there was no sign of him. And
You say it
we
is five of you guys in the truck? Wasn't it five of you?
there were 7 of us total.
Seven of you.
Now after Travis got out, there was only 6 of us in the truck, but 7 total originally. And so there was 6 of us that went back. Yeah.
So
I got
how
you.
long did you search for Travis when you went back?
Oh, 20 minutes, something like that, or longer. We made several circles. First of all, right inside the clearing, and then out into the trees on the side of the clearing, and in spite of that, everybody pretty much stayed pretty close together. We didn't widen our numbers. We stayed within arm's reach of each other.
Right.
Yeah.
We weren't hugging or anything, not hanging on to each other, but we were all stayed pretty much not in a huddle, but pretty close to each other.
Yeah.
But we searched all around there and couldn't find anything of him. And at one point there, I realized that when we went back to the spot before we got there, I was thinking I had this image in my mind of finding Travis like a burnt corpse on the ground. And
Right.
so when we got back, not seeing that, but before long I realized he's not there at all, and there's no sign of him leaving anywhere, no sign of anything. I broke down because the whole thing was just so traumatic, and also because I was happy to see that Travis wasn't there, which meant that he wasn't dead. At least he wasn't dead yet, that he was gone. And if he left himself on foot, he's okay. But if they picked him up and took him, then he must be okay as well. So I sighed relief. That was part of my emotional reaction there.
Yeah. At what point did you contact the authorities, and who did you contact first?
Yeah, we went back to town, back to Heber, which is only like a 10-minute drive. And when we got there, we talked about it a bit on the way back, but Ken Peterson was actually the one that got out of the truck and went to the payphone and called the local authorities. And Ken Peterson told us that this guy who he talked to said that he'd be over as quick as he could. And he was. It was, I don't know how, 5 minutes or so, and somebody got there. He was a deputy sheriff, I guess. And we talked to him first. We told him the whole story and everything, and he wanted to tell the sheriff about it, so he called the sheriff, and believe it or not, the sheriff was there within another 15 or 20 minutes. He was probably driving beyond the speed limit to get there. So he took the whole thing as very serious, and I think there was a bit of personal concern there. He wanted to see what this was all about, because he told me later himself personally that he had his son had an experience, and several people that he knew had UFO experiences, sightings and close experiences. No abductions or anything like that, but close encounters.
Yeah.
And so that let me know what he was thinking at the time.
Did they bring in the military or anything like that? Take like radiation samples or anything like that, or did they do any type of?
At the site, I went back out to the site with the searchers every day that they were searching. I didn't search with the guys. I pretty much stayed up on the road there, pretty much what you might call the central point where everybody parked their vehicles and stuff. And at one point,
Control point.
Yeah, right. At one time, a couple of guys that I was working with who came back up the hill with me, and they were out there as well. 2 or 3 of the guys didn't come, but a couple of them did, and we were watching these guys, which were in Forest Service uniforms, and they were conducting some sort of experiments or something with equipment there. And they were interested in the ground and the trees. They were doing something there, and I asked them, what they were doing. They said they were checking for radiation, and I they had Forest Service uniforms on, so I didn't think that they were anything but that. But they said there was no radiation, and I told them that we'd showered and changed clothes and everything, but maybe the only thing I could think of was still there other than the truck, and they didn't want to go down there. One of us went back and got a couple of hard hats and brought it up to them, and they measured that with the Geiger counter, I guess it was, and it seemed to react pretty strongly to that. And within seconds after that, they rolled up their machines and left. They left up over the ridge, and they were gone. I went and asked a Forest Service guy that I knew that was not very far away from there who those guys were, and he said he never seen them. He don't know who they are. So, Forest Service is government, but what if they were Forest Service or not, or some other branch of the government, I don't know. But the whole thing was very strange.
Mm. So how did Travis's family react to him being missing?
How did they react to him being missing?
Yeah.
The only one I really saw was his mother at first. She wasn't really in disbelief, but she wasn't the kind of a person to break down about something like that. If somebody came and told her that one of her kids got killed or something, that's kind of how she would react to it, the way she did react to it. It was sort of like that. It was sort of a disbelief, but wanting to hear all the details, wanting to know more about it. That's what it was. She was asking questions all the time. And the deputy that went with me down to her house to tell her about it, that very night, right after we'd come back up the hill and searched, her name was Mary Kell is actually her last name. And after we'd told her all about it and everything, she immediately left and went back into Snowflake, where she lived, and she wanted to call her family and all that stuff. She took it very serious, but the deputy that was with me thought that she didn't take it serious enough. He had a whole lot to say about that. But if he knew who she was, then she would realize that she's not the kind of a person to break down like maybe you expect somebody to do.
Yeah. So obviously the authorities mustn't have believed your story. Is that right?
I think the sheriff believed it, and I'm pretty sure the other guy, Ellison, believed it, and several after that, and Forest Service and all that people that knew me knew that I would tell the truth about something like that, and so they just believed it was real. I mean, based on that, and of course several of the other guys, there was only one bad apple in the group that had any, problem with the law before. Yeah. And the rest of us were all, clean of any kind of, nobody had a record. And so they pretty much believed us. But there were people there. The sheriff wouldn't actually say that he believed us, but I could tell that he did. Officially, being the deputy, being the sheriff of Navajo County, he had to be a professional. So that's the way he acted.
Yeah. So obviously in the film that you had to take lie detector tests. How many lie detector tests did you actually take?
How many lie detector tests?
Yeah.
Well, after Travis would search him for 4 days, they decided that it wasn't going to do him any good anymore to search. Obviously, 4 days worth of searching, and they found nothing, not even a trace. I didn't tell them to stop the search, but they did, and it was on a Monday that they decided that they wanted us to take lie detector tests. In fact, they told us about that on Sunday. And so Monday morning, we all went down and took the test. That was just one test, and we all passed it except for Alan Dallas. He was the one, we call him the black sheep of the crew.
Right.
He's been called that. But truth is, he didn't flunk his test. He was just inconclusive because he wouldn't cooperate very well.
Right.
He didn't trust the examiner, at all. He didn't trust the authorities. He thought they were out to frame us for something, for murder, actually, which is mostly what the test was about. Only one question out of 4 was about the UFO, and the other 3 were about, did we hurt him? Do we know anybody that did anything to him? Did we kill him? And of course, all of us but one passed, and the other test, which was Alan Dallas, he came out inconclusive. However, in '93, just a month or so before the movie came out, after it was already in the can, so to speak, another lie detector. We were challenged by another skeptic to get lie detector tests again. Travis and I and Alan Dallas, who had the inconclusive test, went ahead and we went down to the valley and took another test, and all 3 of us passed totally 100% to every question that the guy had for us.
That's good. So when Travis reappeared, was it you we contacted first?
No. They show that in the movie, but that's not what happened. There's a whole lot of things in the movie that didn't happen the way they show in the movie.
Yeah.
Travis did call a brother-in-law, but it was his sister's husband, not me.
Right.
And then I think his name was Grant. I probably shouldn't say his last name. His name was Grant, and he got a hold of Travis's other brother, his actual brother, Dwayne Walton, and Dwayne pretty much took it from there.
Right.
And
So
all that happened after that was with Dwayne, or on something that Dwayne did, including taking Travis down to Phoenix right after he was returned.
So do you know what state of mind Travis was in when he was found?
Well, I didn't see Travis for about 2 days. I didn't even hear that he was returned in like for almost a day. I didn't know. But when I finally got word that he was returned, I of course called his brother, and he answered, and I told him I wanted to see him, and of course he said sure, and so I went down to the valley to Dwayne's house, and that's the first time I saw Travis. And when I saw him, he was just like so many people have described, including Sheriff Gillespie. He acted nervous and like something terrible had happened to him. I mean,
Yeah.
there's a lot of words you can say about it. I wanted to ask him what had happened. I was very interested in that, but he wasn't too interested in answering questions about that. Actually, we did, after a while, got kind of loosened up, and we started talking about stuff, but he wanted to talk about common things. He was asking questions about my sister and about things in Snowflake and people and his mother and things like that. And he didn't really want to talk or tell me about what happened to him. I mean, he did a little, but he didn't do it with that much enthusiasm, put it that way.
Yeah.
Right.
So how long was it before he started opening up about his experience?
Well, he started talking to people like the experts that were sent. They started doing psychological and physical tests on him, and APRO, the Aerial Phenomena Organization, got a hold of him, came and got involved, and they had all kinds of tests. They had experts coming from all over the place, and those were just of that type. Other than that, there were just a slew of people from all over the world, coming to as reporters, about every. I mean, I don't know how many countries they came from, but dozens. So Travis was inundated with all that. And after I saw him that one time, then I left and came back up the hill. I didn't see him again for another several days after.
So Travis married your sister, didn't he? Is that right?
He did what?
Did Travis marry your sister?
Oh, yeah, a year later, yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So what's your relationship like with Travis and the rest of the crew that experienced that?
for many years, everything was fine between everybody. It's funny that just in the last couple of years, there's been some contention, among the crew, and it's also among just a very few, because there's 3 of us now that aren't around anymore, and there isn't any contention with any special contention, no major things with anybody, but a lot of people, skeptics especially, are making a whole lot of that contention like as if it's a big thing.
Yeah.
And it's just a normal argument. Some of it is just so plain it's not even worth saying, just normal stuff. Basically, I don't want to get into that because it's just silly, it's just nonsense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Understandable.
I mean, there's no reason for any of that. I mean, we passed that, and everybody live their lives, and that's just silly high school drama stuff that doesn't need to be anyway.
Right.
Yeah.
Just
Travis and I have had been off and on, So, I mean, Travis and I knew each other for 9 years before the incident. He worked with me for 9 years before the incident. And during that time, there was a couple of different times that we had an argument, and Travis just left. He quit. He didn't come back until the next year. That happened a couple of times, that sort of thing, before the UFO incident. And when I took off and left him, that caused a bit of a problem. Not a big one, not like in the movie. They make a big issue of it in the movie, but it wasn't really like that. We had a problem when he got married to my sister Dana, because I didn't like that. I was just being a brother,
Yeah.
Stuff like that, just ordinary stuff, and we've had trouble since. Just things like that. Don't need to get into it.
Yeah. So did you ever go back to the scene where it all happened to see if there was any weird occurrences?
There hasn't been any occurrences like that with a bunch of people. I personally have had experiences, things that have happened since then. One was on the north rim of the Grand Canyon several years later. I had an orb, not a classic UFO, but the orb thing. Orbs were actually classical, but I had an encounter, I should say a close experience, but not an abduction, with an orb. That's a story all by itself. And then from 93 until 96, I went to England several times studying crop circles, and in 96 I actually saw an orb make a crop circle in less than a minute, and that spooked me so bad I forgot everything I was doing and just left, and I've never been back to England since then. But before that, as far as crop circles, I was studying crop circles and everything that I had experienced, and I was with these people a number of times who were called themselves the circle makers. And they're very open about it. They don't necessarily say what they do specifically because they don't want to get in trouble for some of it. But I saw a lot of that. That's basically all I did see. That's all I experienced. That's all I studied. That's all I encountered was crop circles being made by people. And so I pretty much come to the conclusion that they were all man-made. But in 1996, I had that experience with an orb, a green orb, as it turned out, making a crop circle. And so now what I believe is that at least a small part of the crop circles are made by something other than people.
Right.
I don't know what's doing it, but yeah.
Yeah. Did you ever go back and take any samples, or I think I've seen a documentary where you took core samples of the trees. Is that right?
Yes, you're right. Yeah, I did that several years after the incident, and there was a scientist by the name of Levengood, and I sent the samples and whatnot to him. Part of the samples, it basically displayed phenomenal tree growth at the site. In fact, the tree closest to where Travis was standing, which is basically underneath the UFO, it showed a very strong growth rate, 32 times the normal growth rate. And from there on back into the trees from that spot, it became less and less.
Wow.
And it didn't seem to be adjusted to the clearing, like as if it was growth due to the clearing. In fact, the growth started right at that time, that particular year, and the area had not been, the area was logged that would have caused additional growth was logged a couple of years prior to that. The growth, the phenomenal growth started right then, pretty much centered on that particular time and date. So, you know, it's from there it's just a speculation. I did all that testing and everything, and I still have all those samples and all the drawings and maps and everything that was done. But it's just started out being a personal thing, my own self, and then sent it to Levengood for examination, and he corroborated all that. But people since then have made a bigger deal out of it.
Yeah.
You know, because those findings are not conclusive. They're very interesting, but they're not conclusive.
Awesome.
Do you feel like any part of that incident was covered up at all?
That's what?
Did you feel as though any part of the incident with Travis was covered up at all?
That last word you spoke there is what I don't understand. All the other words I did.
At all. At all.
At all.
At all.
Yeah, at all.
Okay.
At
Sorry.
all.
Now, ask the question again now that I understand
Right.
that last word.
Do you feel as though any part of the incident was covered up?
At
That's
all.
not
At all.
at all what?
Well, do you feel as though there was any government involvement to cover it up?
Oh, government involvement.
Yeah.
Well, there have been things that have happened, but there's nothing that I could say conclusively. The closest thing that happened to government involvement is the following year, in 1976, somebody from the government, from the National Agriculture, a criminal investigator, acting on 8 counts of 8 indictments, okay, of criminal doing, would turn out to be completely false and ridiculous. The guy spent a month investigating every aspect of my business and my life, my family, the whole shot, and finally went away with nothing that he could use. But they certainly tried, and I felt that he was that wasn't normal. It's not something the government would normally do. It was something that I suspected very strongly that a skeptic who lived in Washington, D.C., Philip Klass, had decided he needed to push forward and get the government to do. I think that's what it was, because one of the things, in fact, the number one item on the indictment was a creation of a fictitious character, which, with a long story short, turned out to be my brother Charles, who lived in Mexico. Okay, and it just coincidentally, he happened to be up there that day that this guy first showed up. The first day this investigator showed up. We were having a family reunion. It was only the only day that my brother was here for a year, probably within a year, and he was here that day. And so when the guy says fictitious character Charles Rogers, I said, well, this is ridiculous. He's right here. I had my brother come over. He showed him his driver's license and all that, you know. And so that dispelled the whole thing right there. But he spent another month investigating everything he could. Just trying with every ounce of ability the government had to find something wrong with something, and they couldn't find a thing.
Wow, that's amazing.
So that's just, to me, that was direct government involvement, but it was involvement with me, not necessarily the incident.
Yeah.
Right.
Stephen, have you got any more questions?
Well, we got about. I was just supposed to ask you that because we got I think like 7 minutes left in the show, and I was going to see if maybe you had anything to top it off. I mean, all I know is Mike's been a wonderful guest, and we appreciate you taking your time out of your day, your busy schedule to be with me and Kell and share your story. And I'm sure that a lot of the audience in the UK are um, probably really intrigued by the whole situation and the incident.
Definitely. Yeah, I know
Well,
they definitely are.
I'm glad to be here and answer the questions the best of my ability.
Oh, I mean, from everything I've ever watched you on, and I watch you a lot, Mike. I mean, you're consistent, and that's one thing in my book is when you're consistent and you never waver off what you've said. And I mean, I'm going back years ever of different things, and it's consistent every time. It's nothing added, nothing taken away. It's you know, it's where I can feel myself that it's a genuine story. It's or not even a genuine story. It's a genuine something genuine that happened, an
Yeah.
experience, and you could tell when people are authentic and genuine, or when they're just doing this to do clout or whatever you want to call it. And also my partner here, Mr. Brian J. Laverty, the owner of Parapost Network, and of course I'm the owner of Paralinks, which we've merged together and tried to bring this. We don't just do paranormal. I mean, we're everything. Cooking. I don't. If you want a cooking show, we do cooking shows. But we're not. But we're come together, and he great guy, and he wants to let you know that with great show today, Mr. Mike, and man, he's I think we hit it out of the ballpark today with it.
Now, who is it you're talking about here?
Oh,
Your
Brian J.
partner?
Laverty, yeah, he's the owner of Parapost.
Okay,
Yeah,
all right.
yeah. He's a matter of fact, if you don't, if his accent's not as bad, but he's from Canada, Toronto. He's got the Bolt accent, so you're not, you're gonna, but you can understand Brian. You just can't understand Kill.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just me.
Well, I understand most of what you say. It's just that certain words kind of throw me off.
Oh, you should actually hear her speak in her actual the way they actually talk in the area that she lives in. And it's like a
Yeah,
foreign language. I'm
Yeah,
telling you.
yeah, I know that. I've seen that a lot. You know, like I say, I've been over there a number of times, and so I've been around a lot of that. Yep.
Oh,
I mean, it really does sound very like it's a totally different language altogether.
yeah, I get that a lot.
A lot of times it doesn't sound like it's English at all.
Yeah, a lot of the
yeah,
words,
that's
our
true.
words don't sound English at all. Especially when other people from down
Cool.
south hear it, they don't understand one either.
Yeah.
I've heard most people in England do not understand anybody that lives in the town, the city you live in.
That's right. Yeah.
You know, I seem to understand British broadcasters, you know, TV personalities, radio and like that, but they have a way, they've managed to cut off almost all of their hard accent.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
Now, I
Yeah.
mean, she's got a fan in the audience. Look at here. Kristen says, "I find your accent beautiful."
Oh,
So she's
thank
got
you.
fans.
Well, I'm not saying that she doesn't sound good. I'm just saying I don't understand a lot of it.
Bless.
I don't either. That's
Yeah, my,
true.
my granddaughter speaks
That's why we get along so well.
with a Cockney type accent, and man, it sounds really cute. It really
Yeah,
does.
Cockney's a lovely
That's
accent.
awesome.
Hmm. Yeah.
I tried to get her to talk more like someone from London, but she can't pull it off.
Hmm.
Because you
Hmm.
have to speak more Londonese for American audience.
Right.
But I
Try
mean
to,
that's pretty much it.
doesn't work.
So we got 2 minutes left of this show, and I guess Kel, what's your dream came true? What do you think?
Oh my God, absolutely amazing. It was an absolute pleasure to speak to
She's
you.
still nervous.
Well, I'm glad for that.
Yeah, it's
She's
ever
still
since
nervous.
I seen the movie, I've always wanted to do an interview like this. So it's been my dream come true anyway. I hope you understood that, by the way.
Texan accent.
Well, there's another one. Yeah, there's another one we got. Kristen Johnson. She said you should hear her Massachusetts, Texas accent. She says I can't even imagine that. I mean, Massachusetts accent's bad enough as it is, but Texan with that?
That's hard to imagine, those two.
Oh man, that's rough.
You know, I can't
But
understand
Mr.
Australian accent. Most Australian accents
Right.
are fairly understandable to me. I've been down there 2 different times, and that's a place I love. I love Australia.
Yeah, it's
All right, well, we're
beautiful.
getting that.
England's nice too, but Australia is a special place.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Well, we got one. We got one here on the network. She's from Australia, and wow, just wow. But Mr. Mike, we got 1 minute left in the show. So for everybody out there in the audience, can you tell us, if they want to either ask you questions, talk to you, where can they reach you at, or do you have any links?
No, my Facebook page is just Mike Heston-Rogers. It's Mike Heston dash Rogers, to be exact. But other than that, and I don't give out my phone number. I'm sorry to say, I just don't do that. I do to certain people that, for business purposes, or sometimes just as friends, but I don't give it out to just anybody and everybody.
Now,
But I will
real
talk
quick,
to
your
people
old
over my
page,
Facebook. Say
right?
that again?
Your old page, it was hacked. The one
Yeah.
without the hyphen.
That's right. The one that just Mike Heston-Rogers without the hyphen. I don't even know what it looks like now. It's useless to me because the hacker, we shut down activity on that, and it became useless to them too. So it's just a kind of a dead page. I can't even get a hold of Facebook for anything. Nobody can. So I can't say shut it down. It just stays there. But it's not my page at all. It hasn't been for damn near a year now.
All right, Mr. Mike. This is the end of the show. This concludes it. Sit real tight, and we're just to go into the outro. And everybody, we'll see you next week on Closing the Gap with Stephen and Kell. All right. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
We appreciate you very much.
You bet. Thank you.